So for the next presentation, I'm going to invite up Brendan Dunford, environmental consultant and co-founder and director of the Burren Bio Trust. Thanks, Brendan.
Thanks very much, and it's great to be here. I'd like to thank Carroll and Niamh for the invitation. It's a privilege to be in such beautiful surroundings. My name is Brendan Dunford. I'm also, like James, from a farming background in County Waterford. I did my PhD in Moran, so I have a bit of experience in research, and occasionally I engage on the policy front. And I was just listening to James this morning. This is what it looks like inside James's head and my head around that CAP cycle every 6 or 7 years. It's turmoil and it's chaos. But my greatest privilege isn't working with the research side or the policy side, it's really working with farmers. And I've been privileged to work with farmers in the Burren and more recently across Ireland over the last number of years. And this morning, I guess I wanted to share some of the lessons that I've learned from them. I'm not a practicing farmer, but I hope I can kind of reflect some of the lessons I've learned about the how piece. The how piece is ultimately an important one. We can have as much resources and policy and strategy as we want, but we need to deliver. So I think farmers are a huge resource in that regard. So that's my question this morning. How do we encourage farmers to deliver more for ecosystem services? Not just biodiversity, but the whole suite of ecosystem services. Meat, pollinators, clean water, landscapes. And as I said, my experience is based in the Burren as manager of the Burren programme and as a founder and volunteer with the Burren Bio Trust, working with farmers, learning from them. And I'm going to summarise 25 years' work in 3 sort of points. To me, it's about the pocket, the head and the heart. It's financial, but it's also the technical advice and support, and also the reason. We all go to work in the morning with a sense of purpose, I hope, and that's what keeps us going. It's the same thing for farmers. So think about that pocket, head and heart, and I'm going to give you 2 examples of each of those in my short presentation this morning. So I'm a big supporter of result-based payments. We instigated this system in the Burren. My colleague Sharon Parr would have developed the first real scoring system in Ireland. And it's beautifully simple to capture something that's very complex. So here are 3 scenarios from the Burren. You can see good, indifferent and bad in that slide in reverse order. And it's pretty simple actually to create a scorecard, which we did in the course of 2 or 3 weeks, to capture that in the form of a simple digit between 0 and 10. And then to reward the farmer accordingly. So the top one, rubbish, nothing. The bottom one, the farmer isn't really farming that anymore, so it's not a really good outcome for nature either. Bottom one, it's superb, it's well managed, it's managed according to stocking levels, top score, top payment. That payment structure then stimulates the farmer to take action, to move from a low score to a high score. So we provide funding to deliver the action with the farmer to improve the score, so then you get an annual dividend for your outcome. So it's not just paying for results, it's supporting the actions that deliver the results as well. In the top case, we do need, even with a results-based system, James will agree, we need better enforcement of the negative activity. And in the Burren, we leaned heavily on those who are damaging. For the middle ground guy, we needed the incentive to drive him or her to improve and deliver more for nature. And in the well-managed one, it was a case of rewarding. Those who would always manage their land well got an instant reward, but that reward was available to all comers by taking on the actions. So that worked really well. But the one point I'd really like to make this morning is when we think about payments to farmers, we think, give them the money and it's done. The amount of money is important, no doubt about it, and I'd argue strongly against putting a ceiling on result-based payments, which I think is just ludicrous. But the fairness of the payments. If this guy next door is getting the same amount and he's doing nothing, that's not fair. You don't respect that payment. The promptness of the payment is huge for farmers. They lose trust completely if they don't get paid when they said to get paid. And I think the third point, which I'm starting to come to realise as being very important, was mentioned this morning, is the nature of the payment. I think there's a jadedness of expectation when it comes to cap payments. They think it's more of that sort of stuff, and there's no association of having really to push to get that. It's a case of having to comply or not do things. I think the private sector have a huge role to play, and we're working with Trinity and Anke and a few other people to try and explore how private sector capital can be brought into farmers' pockets on the basis of them delivering for nature. Why not? It's an ecosystem service of huge value at the moment. So the source of the payment is something, the nature of the payment and the source of it are really important. And I say one other thing about payment, we can't frame it as compensation. Farmers think this is compensation. This is not. This is a payment for delivering ecosystem services to society. The other side of the pocket is a really interesting one, making nature pay, creating new opportunities for farmers for nature-related products and services. Here's Raymond Casey building a wall in the burn. Nobody can build a wall like this guy. Fantastic. Here's gates that we installed, locally made in the burn, which enhance the countryside, but are all manufactured locally. 4 different farming families are making those gates at the moment. Here's the O'Rourke family who have direct selling their meat from the barn now and have glamping and have group tourism. Here's Patrick McCormick bringing a group out into the learning landscape of the burn. Masterful. If you want an authentic farming, if you want an authentic insight into rural Ireland, go with a farmer. It's phenomenal and it pays well. And this is outside the barn, Colin Galvin, his father Martin, who are phenomenal farmers up in Connemara. Amazing people, the heart and soul of the community. Colin dons his orange jacket every now and again and joins a bunch of neighbours in what's called Natura communities, removing rhododendron. So if we're serious about nature, we have a resource in rural Ireland and they're called farmers, and they need to be incentivised and rewarded for being part of the solution, such as in this instance. That's the pocket. The head, all the farmers are protesting about what? About bureaucracy. I'd be out with them myself if I had the time, because it drives us all mad. Now, of course, you need a certain amount of accountability and transparency and paperwork to back it up, but I think we've kind of lost the run of ourselves to some degree. When we started the Burn programme, we were determined to get everything on one page. So the farmer's map on one side, on the flip side then, his scores, and a simple sentence about what you can do to improve your score. And that's enough. It's almost too much for some. But get rid of all the additional stuff, which is only confusing. And the farmer, just his signature once a year is what we need. So simplify. We need to be absolutely focused on simplification, because we're going in the opposite direction, unfortunately, and that's really deterring a lot of farmers who are kind of abdicating responsibility to private planners who themselves are under huge pressure. So there's a break in the system in that regard, I think. And I love this saying, a friend of mine gave it to me from Scotland: keep the countryside complex. We need complexity. We're moving towards monocultures and simplicity. We need complexity. And the thing I love about results-based is you have different farmers doing different things in different ways at different times, and that's what nature loves. Nature's going to find its niche within that complexity somehow. The other piece about the head is, when we're talking about support for farmers, the more local we can make it, the better. This is our office in Carroll, where farmers, we had an open door policy. If you had a problem with your payments, if you had a problem with getting permissions for your works, if you had a problem with anything, you came into our office and you could get talking to me or to one of my colleagues and get your problem sorted out one way or another. When we surveyed farmers, what did they like most about the programme? It wasn't the payment, it was the access to the local support. So the more local you can make it, the better. And that's the one really good thing about Acres, I think, is that there are local teams there to support the farmers in delivering for nature. But beyond that, there's a huge, we're very fortunate in Ireland to have a really good advisory service, Tagascan private planners, well-trained, great people by and large. But the problem is they're not given time to do their jobs. I think they're hit with deadlines, they're hit with this, that and the other. So I think there's a real capacity issue there. We need to enhance that. In Burn Bio Trust, we have a little project called Farming for Nature, and within that we have a little programme called The Horse's Mouth, where we match up farmers. So one farmer, you can see in the bottom right here, Clive Bright from Sligo, who's an extraordinary man, visiting Michael Doherty up in Leitrim, The Horse's Mouth, and giving advice on what Michael could do to enhance nature on his farm. So it's peer-to-peer, it's relatable, it's based on experience, it's magic, it works wonderfully well. So we need to mobilise farmers, not just as a resource to deliver, but also to advise and deliver and to inspire other farmers to do so. Here's an amazing dairy farmer in Waterford, Shane Fitzgerald, who again had a horse's mouth visit and has put in this beautiful pond on his land. And out visiting farmers, I know Brendan is one of them, there's an appetite there to do more. There's an appetite to do more. And what's stopping people? It's resources, because there's a limit to what you can get from agri-environment, and knowledge. Knowledge is a huge gap. We also have a little programme called The Hare's Corner, where we fund landowners to take action for nature, and we're overwhelmed with the response. And what people say when we visit them is, I really want to do something, but I'm afraid of doing the wrong thing. So we have a big gap in terms of the head piece. And the plan for nature, I think every farmer and every landowner in Ireland should have a plan for nature, highlighting what they have and what they can do to look after it better. A simple investment, but one that a pond and a plan for nature, every landowner in Ireland should have, I think. That would make all the difference. So finally, and this is the part I really wanted to emphasise, because I think this is the one piece that we're missing a lot, the heart piece, and there's referenced in a number of the comments from the floor. We need to celebrate rather than criticise. Mullinóga, as they say, agus tugishiad. This is a little festival we set up in the Burn about 15 years ago called the Winterich, where we bring cattle onto the mountain, and you can see the people behind. Now, the first few years we did that, we didn't have too many farmers, but the farmers were just astonished that so many people of the members of the general public were that interested in what they do. So now the farmers feel respected and they feel valued as a consequence of this festival, which has really put them and the services that they deliver, the ecosystem services that they deliver, is put them in the spotlight. So celebrate rather than criticise. And part of that celebration Brendan referred to, there was a little programme we have called Farming for Nature, where we identify exemplars within the farming community of how to farm for nature. These are my heroes. I might be up here talking, but right now, out there, they're farming, they're delivering for nature and for society and good food as well. And this is a quote, so the heart piece, we need to reimagine farming. We need to share a more positive, practical and inclusive narrative around farming and nature. And this little quote says, to change the world, let's start by changing the way we talk about it. And let's highlight those initiatives that are having a positive impact on people and planet to renew our confidence and spur us into action. So here are some of the farmers for nature across Ireland. I visit them on a fairly regular basis now, and they just blow me away. Absolutely blow me away. They're viable, productive farmers, like Brendan. They deliver for nature in their own way and on their own terms. And they're very engaged in the community and hosting groups and hosting visits. And this is where change will come from. It's farmers inspiring farmers to make the difference. And I think the farmers are the really important ones. They need to be supported by the scientists and by the policy and by the customer, the consumer, of course, as well. And that's the future. So the final slide is, well, I could be up here spoofing, but really everything I'm talking about is based on experience and hard data. This is the field scores from the Burn when we started in 2010. The average score is about 6.8, and by the time we finished in 2022, it was up to 7.8. That's a tangible improvement in the environmental condition of Ireland's foremost biodiverse landscape. The most complex landscape that we have biodiversity-wise and farming-wise, I'd argue as well. So if it can be done on the Burn, it can be done anywhere and at scale. And I applaud the Department of Ag's courage in embracing this result-based model. I haven't done it as well as I'd like, but I think it is the future, and we are leading at a European level on that front. We do need to do better, but the final piece of data I have here is an evaluation of this Burn programme, and it just highlights the economic value of investing in farmers to deliver for nature. A return of 3 to 4 or 4 to 1 in terms of every euro invested, huge social gain, and I suppose revitalising a very isolated rural community. So that's it. How do we encourage farmers to deliver more ecosystem services for society? Incentivising, supporting and encouraging. I think keep those 3 words in mind, the pocket, the head and the heart. So I'll leave it at that, and I thank you very much for your time and attention.